DNA, that was the topic at the center of testimony during much of the Delphi murders trial today.
A DNA analyst took the witness stand today to share what they did and did not find at the spot where the bodies of Abby Williams and Libby German were found. Our senior investigative reporter Bob Siegel was in court today for that testimony.
And he joins us now live after just stepping out of the courtroom. And Bob, what's happening in court right now?
Ann and Scott, I want to bring you up to date on what is happening right now. The testimony first that's happening inside the courtroom. Really difficult testimony this afternoon. The jury is hearing from a crime scene analyst, an investigator with a specialty in blood stain pattern analysis. He's explaining how he thinks all the blood got to various spots around the crime scene, and that means more time for the jury to look at really graphic and horrible pictures of the two girls who were found dead there. I'm going to explain a little bit more about his testimony, and I want to warn you, it is graphic. So, crime scene investigator Pat Cicero says he believes Abby Williams was fatally injured right in the spot where her body was found. But he says Libby German was likely attacked in another spot nearby. He believes she bled to death a short distance away based on where the most blood was found at the scene. And he says he thinks her body was then dragged a short distance to a large tree, perhaps to try to make the body harder to detect. And he believes Libby's blood on a nearby tree, he says it was transferred there by some object. The jury really struggled seeing these images now for a second time. Several jurors shook their heads, looked away. They had a hard time looking back up at these really horrible images. At one point, the blood spatter expert said markings near Libby's eyes where she had some blood on her face. He said those markings were consistent with tears. And at that point, Abby's grandmother put her head down in her hands and she just wept. That testimony was this afternoon. This morning, we heard from a DNA expert at the state crime lab. That woman, Stacy Bozinovski, the woman, hopefully you're seeing that video right now, and she's the one on the right. She testified about the results of the DNA testing that she did on items recovered from the crime scene. Her biggest takeaway, she said there's no DNA whatsoever at the crime scene that is linked to Richard Allen. And there is no DNA recovered from inside Richard Allen's home that matches the two girls. Why would the state put on a witness to testify about that? Likely an effort for the state to get out ahead of what the jury is going to hear from the defense team, and that is the lack of DNA linking Richard Allen to the crime scene is one of the main things that they say proves he did not commit these crimes. Should mention, this afternoon, the testimony was extremely graphic, lots of pictures hard to see. This morning, getting a crash course in DNA and how that all works. The jury and some members of the gallery, they seem to kind of struggle to stay with that. At times, members of the gallery seemed, put it bluntly, they fell asleep. And that drew the ire of Judge Frances Gull. She said right before the lunch break, she said, "I do not conduct court in your bedrooms. I would appreciate you not sleeping in my courtroom." So again, right now, we want to tell you the testimony continues from the blood spatter expert. Emily Longnecker is in the front row, and she's taking in all that testimony since I had to step out. We'll have much more for you coming up on that testimony at 6. In Delphi, I'm Bob Siegel, 13 News.
Bob, thanks so much. And we do have an update on a case that's also linked to this case. It's the man who was tied to leaking evidence in the Delphi murders. We learned today he is no longer facing charges.
A Johnson County judge dismissed that misdemeanor charge that Mitch Westerman was facing. He told investigators while visiting the office of a defense attorney in this Delphi case, he took some pictures of the evidence photos and then shared them.
Westerman has now reached a deal with prosecutors, and they agreed to dismiss the case once he completed his pretrial diversion program.
We're going to take a closer look at all the developments in the Delphi murders trial during our Delphi debrief.
That's when Bob and Emily Longnecker and also our legal expert, Katie Jackson-Lindsay, will have discussions and go more in depth on what developed in court today.
You can watch that at 10 o'clock tonight on WTHR Plus. That's our streaming app. It's available on Apple TV, Roku, and Fire Stick.